Well, guys, there's been developments. There's been developments in the saga of the I&J roller crimper, and y'all just thought we were done with that. Yeah, first thing this morning, I checked my email like I do every day, and I got an email from somebody there at I&J. I can't remember if it's the guy I talked to on the phone previously, but if you recall, we had to do some repairs to our I&J roller crimper. The chevron blades were getting rounded off and dull, and we decided we were going to replace them with nice new sharp ones. But the ones that we bought from I&J, that we ordered specifically from them, the bolt hole pattern didn't line up with what was on our crimper, and come to find out ours was an earlier model, and they were sourcing out the manufacturing of the blades to somebody else, and I guess they changed the hole pattern up at some point. Anyway, to make a long story short, I called I&J when I realized the mistake, wanted to find out what they would do to make it right, whatever. And anyway, they highly suggested that either I drill the new holes out myself or find somebody local to be able to drill them out for me. They would have been happy to do it, but they were going to charge me shipping both ways, sending them back and then shipping them back again. And shipping for those blades down here cost me, it was just shy of $500. Well, that was $1,000 that I didn't feel like that I should have to incur for their mistake. Anyway, after haggling with them and me getting pretty upset, they did agree to pay half the cost of getting somebody to drill them out locally, but they wouldn't budge on the shipping on sending them back. So anyway, after contacting somebody to drill them out for me, found out they were estimating the cost would probably be somewhere around $1,500 for them to drill it out. Andy and I decided to do it ourselves, and ultimately that wound up being the best case scenario. I think total drilling and fabricating time took us about 4.5 hours. So we were able to get the roller crimper fixed, but it still wound up taking a lot longer than what it should have, because the blade should have just been a nice easy bolt on with no modification. So anyway, this morning I got that email from I&J, and they asked me if the problem had been resolved, if I'd found somebody local to drilling it, and then they said if I hadn't, they would be happy to take the blades back and drill them correctly, and they would cover shipping both ways. Now mind you, this was about a week and a half ago, and the only reason that they emailed me that is because they saw the video that came out just a couple of days ago where I blasted them all over YouTube for them basically screwing me over. They said in the body of the email that they saw the YouTube video. So anyway, I replied back to them that I had taken care of the issue myself. Now, I got to give props to I&J. They did come back and they did offer to make it right. However, they did it a week and a half late, and I feel like they mainly did it because I put the video out on YouTube. So while I do accept, I guess, their semi-apology, it really doesn't make up for what they did in the first place. None of this would have had to happen if, when I first called them, they said, yeah, no problem, send them back, we'll pay for shipping, we'll get the problem corrected and get the new blades out to you. So like I said in my first video, I don't like calling companies out. Generally I try to work with them and give them a chance to, to correct whatever type of mistake it is. But when you blatantly screw me and don't try to make it right, just like in this case, I have no problem with putting it out there. But on the other hand, something like this has happened with a local Chevrolet dealer. When they do offer to make it right, I will then also post that also. you know, on our social media, you know, we don't want any of the people that we do business with to look bad. You know, the ones we partner with, the ones we purchase from, you know, we want them to succeed. We want their products to look good, because you know what, if it looks good for y'all, it's going to look good for us also, and that's going to be a positive outcome. And we want to do everything we can to showcase the people we work with in a very positive light, because it's just better for everybody involved. But on the other hand, we're not going to hide from the truth, and we will put the truth out there, good or bad. So anyway, there's that. Will I do business with I&J again after reading that reply? I might, if the need arises. You know I said in the other video I'll never do business with them again, but in all fairness, they did come back. They did try to make the situation right, albeit a little too late. But because of that, you know, in the future, if I need to, you know, I will explore doing business with them again. But now that I know better, I will be very careful and being extremely specific in whatever it is I need. And also, like I said in the first video, they do make a good product. They make a really good roller crimper. You know, that's not to discredit, you know, the products that they make as a company. It was simply the customer service I got when trying to get replacement parts for that product. That was my only beef with them. So anyway, I'd say that this matter is now concluded on the spraying. All right, if you remember from last year, you know, where we did a little bit of experimental ripping with an unreversed ripper, if you recall, you know, we didn't see any really much difference in yield from the crop, but we saw a huge response in our cover crop to it. Well, this year on this farm, I put in some ripping plots that we're going to carry the yield, see, you know, actually put some numbers on, see if ripping actually improves yield. And right now we're in the middle of it. Right now we're spraying a strip that was ripped. Right over here to the right was unripped, and I can see a little bit of the difference visually. I don't know if the camera's picking up on it. I know the clover in the ripped section looks a whole lot better than the unripped section, but overall definitely not seeing the same response that we saw last year to it. And I think the big reason for that is you know, our Case IH 2500 ripper that we're using now, you know, it didn't disturb the ground near as much as what the unreversed did. You know, recall last year when every time I was going over the ground we ripped with the unreversed, I was commenting how rough it was, and you know, it seemed like the unreversed, it acted a lot more like a chisel plow than a ripper, whereas the 2500 just, I mean, it did not disturb the surface of the soil very much at all. And I think where we saw the big response from the cover crop last year in the unreversed rip ground is not necessarily from the ripping part, the deep vertical tillage, but more so from the top of the soil being disturbed, allowing more oxygen and stuff to get into the top part of the soil, which is not really my goal. You know, our goal is to leave as much of the surface intact as possible, so we maintain the organic matter that we've built, we maintain all the soil structure we've built to promote infiltration. We're just trying to get deep down into the fragipan, break it up some to allow the roots from our annual ryegrass to penetrate the fragipan quicker and easier, so we can get rid of that fragipan. You know, that's our primary goal. But you can see it a little bit more plain right here. You see those darker clumps of green, you know, that's the clover, whereas right over here next to it, we just don't see that near as much. But anyway, I think I've got 4 plots replicated as we go across. We've got unripped, ripped, unripped, ripped, unripped, ripped, unripped, ripped. But I did find out a problem with my plots. I don't know if you can see, but I've got an orange flag right here marking the beginning of the plots. And anyway, my plots are 3 rows off from what, you know, my actual passes are that we're making right here. And the reason being is that, you know, my ripper is a 6-row ripper, whereas, you know, our planter and our hooded sprayer is 12 rows wide. And when I come in here to rip, you know, I was using our guidance lines, and for the 6-row ripper to make it exact passes with what you know, we're making with the planter, I should have shifted my guidance line over 3 rows. Well, I didn't do that. So anyway, where I was making one pass with a ripper where the plots are next to each other, you know, I've got 3 rows I got 3 rows ripping in one plot and then 3 rows ripping in the next plot. So anyway, I've got it all marked with a flag. So I mean, we're still going to have 12 rows of unripped and ripped. It's just that when it comes time to pick them, one of the passes with my picker is going to be, you know, half the picker is going to be picking in this pass with a hooded sprayer, and the other half the picker is going to be picking with this pass of the hooded sprayer, and you got those guest rows right there. And anyway, we're doing this on RTK, so you know, technically it should be sub-inch accuracy, and I shouldn't be able to tell any difference with a picker, but I guess come harvest we'll find out just how good this RTK guidance is. Well, I tell you what, it is a cold one today. That cold front moved through last night. Woo! I heard him get filled up, getting the warmth of the tractor here. Woo! Don't get me wrong, I ain't complaining. I'm glad for one last cold spell before spring gets here. Gives me one more chance to wear my nice, comfortable hoodies. Because ain't gonna be long. I'm gonna be plumb miserable out here. Technically, I really shouldn't be spraying today as cold as it is. It's about 40 degrees now. It's supposed to get up to around 53 today. You know, cold weather, you know, the cover crop's not growing as well. Not gonna be harder to take up the chemical, but this cold snap's only going to be brief. It was nice and warm yesterday. It's supposed to start warming up again tomorrow. So I still think the cover crop's actively growing and it will take up the chemical. Plus, you know, we just filled up. So I added in a little bit of extra AMS and Roundup just to make sure we're going to get a good kill on this. As cool as it is, my hydraulic fluid's a little thicker than what it is, so they turn my flow down, keep my pressure correct there. But anyway, in other news, got some, I guess what I consider some pretty good news this morning. Kelly took that sprayer pump over to Tennessee Ag, let them pull it apart, and come to find out, I did everything right with the seal. But the side of the housing that the seal with O-ring fits down into apparently is wore out. When I pressed it down in there, I thought it went down in there mighty easy, but seeing as how I've never pressed a seal in a new housing, I mean, I didn't know. But apparently that pump style causes cavitation around the seal, and the metal had been eaten up, and that's where all that water's coming from. So at least I don't have to have a new pump. I do have to have a new, that side of the housing, which I think is $141. So $141 for housing, $165 for seal. You know, we're getting out for a little over $300, so about 10% of the cost of a brand new pump. So hopefully that fixes it, because we're going to need that sprayer first part of next week. We gotta get our second shot of nitrogen on our wheat crop, and we need that sprayer up and running. Anyway, that's the update for now. Not much else to say, just going back and forth, getting our burn down strips done. Well, I just had to make some decisions on the fly, some changes for this year. I did a video back the earlier year talking about, you know, our variety selection, especially corn seed variety selection, just trying to save some money by going with either, you know, some non-GMO varieties or just some straight Roundup ready varieties. And you know, I found some really good varieties. Problem is that wasn't really sure if I'd be able to get them just because of supply. Just because they're listed in the catalog does not mean that there's any supply available. So anyway, my salesman there at Helena, I mean, he's been working hard for the last couple months, and he's got the varieties I originally wanted. He's got all of them except for one. The thing is, the one variety he wouldn't be able to get was the one that I thought wasn't going to be any problem. It's a Pioneer 1464. You know, I've been planting it for quite a few years. One of my favorite varieties of all time. Pioneer actually quit producing it last year, so any inventory that there would have been for this year would have been from previous year's production that was in cold storage. And I mean, everybody seemed to think that there would, you know, be a fair amount of supply of it for at least this year, but come to find out, apparently there's not. So I had 29 bags of that ordered on some of my better ground, and I'm kind of disappointed not going to be able to plant it, because like I said, I love that variety. So anyway, I had to make a decision on what to replace that variety with if I'm not going to be able to use it. So a couple of the other varieties that decal varieties that I was able to get with like non-GMO or Roundup Ready, no, there's not any more extra supply of that, so I wasn't able to increase my order on those. So anyway, I decided to go with an oldie but goodie, tried and true variety. It's worked for a lot of people. I've only planted it 1 year before, and I mean, it did good. I was really expecting more out of it, but that's going to be a decal 6744. Like I said, I've only planted it 1 year. I planted it 2 years ago, and I was, you know, based upon what it had done for everybody else, I was really expecting big things, and you know, to me, it just kind of yielded average for the year. You know, wasn't really anything that blew me away, but we're going to give it another shot this year. The price point on it was one reason that I went with it this year over some others, because like I said, it's an old variety, so it's definitely going to be a cheaper variety. You know, we're really trying to keep our, you know, not buy hardly any corn seed, you know, over $300 a bag, but hopefully I think this 6744 ought to be maybe somewhere in the $280-ish per bag, possibly. Anyway, I put a lot of thought and effort into, you know, our corn seed varieties, and I don't like having to change it on the fly, but you know, sometimes this happens, especially when you're trying to you know, get, you know, some varieties that are not, you know, real popular and mainstream everywhere, that there's a real big supply of. And like I said, the one reason I'm not doing that is simply because of cost. You know, a lot of these varieties are well over $300 a bag, and you know, frankly, we don't have the type of ground to support the yields that require, you know, that $300 per bag corn seed. So I'm disappointed about not getting the 1464, but I do believe a 6744 is going to be a very viable alternative for us. So we'll see what it brings this fall. All right, well, my tractor gets warmed up. Let me show you a little bit about what's going on over here on Taylor. As you can tell, a whole lot of bare dirt over here. We got a sewer riser over there, and then right across the top of this hill, you can see all that disturbed down there in the bottom. Another sewer riser. You see track hose across the road. Yeah, Jackson's doing a lot of commercial development right here, getting ready for a new huge development across Highway 45 over there. Be a bunch of apartments, townhouses, shopping areas, park. Ironically, a farmer's market, taking away several hundred acres of farm ground over there. What you see over here is, you know, in preparation for all that, they're getting, you know, sewer lines run, and this wheat field, you see where the track goes at, that's where Andy was talking about where they destroyed some of my wheat, putting that sewer line in. Well, you know, of course, I'm really upset about all this going on. You know, there's nothing I can do about it, but I gotta say the company doing it, I mean, they've done a good job. Yeah, they had to tear up the land, but I think they've done a really good job of reclaiming the land. I mean, I'm probably gonna have to bring you know, a disc and do all to smooth up some of that over there, but they did a real good job shaping it back the way it was and everything. Yeah, we lost, I don't know, maybe a half acre of wheat, but it could definitely be a whole lot worse. They've minimized, they really worked hard to minimize, you know, how much area they're actually disturbing in installing all of this. So anyway, progress must go on, I guess. Don't mean I gotta like it though. Anyway, I got down to 30 degrees last night. I hope everything is okay on my sprayer here. You know, it didn't get down below freezing for very long. I really doubt anything's busted. Well, I sure hope nothing stopped up. Let's kick our switch on. We've been letting our pump run for a few minutes here. Make sure all those balls float. I don't know if you can see it, I got two balls on the end that are not going up at all. So there they go, they're starting to come out. Yeah, they were a little froze. I see one tip on the end is just dripping. Let me let my wings down so don't get Roundup all over the hoods. You got a little bit dripping. Probably got a little frost up in here. Yeah, she's about stopped up anyway. There's definitely a little frost on there. All right, let's try it again. Oh yeah, we got good flow now. Let's go spray. All right, well, we just got done with our cotton ground, and I'm getting started on some of the corn ground we're going to do. You know, for the most part, all of our corn ground is behind double crop beans, which was aerial seeded. And as you can tell right here, I mean, there's kind of a thin stand right here, but you know, in another 3 weeks, it'll look like there's a lot more. You know, once we get over to other parts of the field, it's definitely quite a bit better. So I'm just going to kind of pick and choose where I spray. Might do some fields, not others. Might do parts of one field and then parts of others would not spray. This farm I'm on now should be our highest yielding corn that we've got. I mean, nice bottom. We're gonna have not decal 6835. I think it's 6839, which is a Roundup Ready variety of 6835. So extremely high yield potential. And even though it's kind of spotty out here, I want to make sure that there's absolutely no competition with the cover crop, as that's corn is coming up, you know, right there in the rows. So anyway, we got 110 acres on this farm. The bottom is kind of the sketchiest as far as staying. You look back behind me on the hill back there, definitely a lot more cover crop up there. And then there's going to be some other farms close to home that I'm just going to completely skip, just cause not much come up. And I really don't understand why we aerial seeded. Not this farm, but all the rest of my farms with an airplane right in front of the remnants of hurricane. Had plenty of rainfall right after we seeded it. It should have germinated and got a perfect stand, but in reality, I think we got a better stand on this that was aerial seeded with the drone after the hurricane. I mean, it got some light rains on it, but not a bunch of good saturating rains. So I don't know, that aerial seeding, it's kind of hit or miss. Although the reason I still do it is that even though we got a thinner stand, by the time we come in here to terminate it to plant, we will still accumulate more biomass than if we had a better stand that was drilled after soybean harvest. Because I've done it both ways in the past, and a thinner stand planted earlier will still give us more biomass, more nitrogen production, and everything else. And looking forward to this coming up here, what I'm gonna do this fall. I'm really gonna take a look at my blends, because we're spending a lot of money on some legumes that's just, I just don't have good luck with it germinating any year. You know, I think I'm probably gonna leave some of my clovers out. We just don't get good luck aerial seeding them, aerial seeding them into wheat straw. However, the vetch, it generally does pretty good, so we'll probably take the money that we were spending on our clover and increase our vetch rate just to try and make more nitrogen. Also, cereal rye can kind of be hit or miss. Aerial seeding, oats is another part of the blend that I like, but you know, it's probably the worst of the grasses as far as coming up. So I might cut that out and increase our rate of annual ryegrass, because in general it seems to do pretty well. You know, plus I've espoused all the benefits of annual ryegrass in the past too. So anyway, you know, this whole cover crop thing, you know, even though every year I talk about, you know, what we're doing and how I think we're doing it right, it seems like every year, you know, I see a little something I need to tweak going forward as we learn more about these cover crops and everything. I don't know, maybe one day we'll get her all figured out.